Welcome to the Explainer. So, who's really pulling the strings in the crypto market? That's the big question today. And to find the answer, we're going to tear apart a massive market crash to really get a look at the hidden forces that are pushing and pulling prices. I mean, how does this even happen? You've got the world's first so-called crypto president, a guy who promised a golden age for digital money, and then somehow oversees one of the biggest collapses the market has ever seen. It's a wild story, and we're going to unpack how he went from hero to, well, the face of a pretty devastating crash for a lot of people. We're talking about $1 trillion. Just gone, wiped out in only 3 months. And you know, the story of why it happened, it's so much deeper than just one person or one headline. It's really a story about massive hype, insane amounts of borrowed money, and a whole lot of hidden agendas. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We've got to understand the promises, the things that got everyone so excited and sent the market into a total frenzy. So what gives? How do you go from calling crypto thin air in 2019 to promising to make the USA the crypto capital of the world just a few years later? Well, it usually comes down to one thing, right? Money. The crypto industry funneled hundreds of millions into his campaign. And in exchange for that support, he promised them the world, a crypto-friendly paradise. And hey, it wasn't just talk. He got elected, and the market, well, it went absolutely wild with pure euphoria.
Just look at these numbers. Bitcoin skyrockets, up almost 80% in less than a year. Everybody thought, this is it. This is mass adoption, led by the US government. The belief was so strong, people were literally borrowing money, taking out loans just to buy more.
And on the surface, things looked great. The new administration was checking all the boxes. Executive orders? Check. A new Crypto 2.0 task force? Check. They even signed the first ever federal law for stablecoins. From the outside, it really looked like the plan was coming together perfectly.
But here's where we see the first big crack between the hype and the reality. That strategic reserve, it sounded huge, right? But here's the catch. They didn't buy a single new Bitcoin from the market. They just took coins the government had already seized and put them in a new wallet. So big headline, but zero new money coming in. It was basically just moving money from the government's left pocket to its right pocket.
And then it all started to burn down. October 10th, 2025. That was the day someone lit the match, and the whole thing started to unravel. A threat to slap huge tariffs on Chinese goods. Now, this sent a shiver through all the markets. The stock market took a hit, but it managed to bounce back. Crypto, though, it was a different story. The market was so full of debt, so much borrowed money, that it just couldn't handle the shock. It didn't just stumble, it went into a complete death spiral. So let's talk about why. It all comes down to this one word: leverage. See, a ton of people weren't just buying crypto with their own money. They were borrowing money to make bigger bets. If you bet right and the price goes up 10%, you could double your money. Amazing. But if the price drops by just 10%, poof, the exchange force sells everything you have and you get wiped out. This creates a domino effect, a brutal cascade of selling that just feeds on itself.
But you see, the tariffs, that was just the spark. The real reason the whole thing went up in flames? Well, that's about the hidden forces that were really running the show behind the scenes. Get this, a Wall Street Journal report drops, and it claims that while everyday people were piling in, betting their savings, the president's own family cashed out at least $1.2 billion, with a B. And they did it through their own crypto platform, which, by the way, they launched right before the election.
And this is what really broke the market spirit. You had influencers and everyday investors getting absolutely wrecked because they believed the hype. Meanwhile, the very people making the promises were allegedly cashing out at the absolute peak. Now, the White House denied everything, of course, but for a lot of people, the damage was already done.
So, another huge piece of the puzzle is where all that big money was really coming from. A lot of it wasn't from true believers, it was from hedge funds playing a game called arbitrage. Think of it like this. They weren't betting on Bitcoin going to the moon, they were just buying it cheap in one place and selling it for a tiny bit more somewhere else, over and over. It's a low-risk trade, and the second that easy money dried up, they were gone, out the door.
And you can literally see them running for the exits right here. Look at the money flowing out of those Bitcoin ETFs. We're talking billions of dollars being pulled from the market. This wasn't just a little bit of selling, this was a stampede. And when that much money leaves that fast, there's just no one left to buy. which just pours gasoline on the fire.
Okay, so let's pause. If you're new to crypto, what are the big lessons here? What does this whole disaster of a story teach us about who's actually in control and how this market really works?
I mean, this table says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have these huge, amazing promises, and on the other, the reality, which was, well, not so amazing. The hype was deafening, but when you look at the actual actions taken, they were either empty gestures or, even worse, they actually hurt the market.
So, when you boil it all down, the crash wasn't really about one guy. It was about a market that was built on a house of cards. You had too much borrowed money, institutions that were just tourists, not long-term investors, and a whole lot of small-time investors who were way in over their heads. The whole thing was running on pure belief, and when that belief shattered, so did the market. All right, so after all that chaos, the big question is, what happens now? Where does crypto go from here? The source material lays out two very different possible paths. Okay, you've got the optimistic take, maybe a 20 or 30% chance that this was all just a big shakeout and will bounce back fast. But the more likely scenario, a long, deep crypto winter. With so much trust destroyed and so much money lost, it's probably going to be a tough road ahead. But, these winters are also when all the bad projects and hype die off, leaving room for the market to rebuild on a stronger foundation. And that brings us to the final, and honestly, the most important question. At the end of the day, who are you going to rely on? The ultimate lesson here is that no single person, not a politician, not an influencer, not even a president, can save you or control this market. Your success, it doesn't come from their promises. It comes from you. It comes from understanding the risks, seeing past the hype, and making smart, disciplined decisions for yourself.